Hi, Brenda.
Hello, Melissa.
Hi, everyone. Sorry. Welcome to Willard Library, beginning genealogy program called Find Out About Your Family. We're just giving a couple more maybe a couple minutes for people to log on. So I have Brenda with me tonight who's going to share. Um, so Brenda, while we're waiting for a few minutes, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Um, I'm involved in genealogy, kind of got involved that way because my dad wanted to write his autobiography. And this was probably about 10 years ago. So he was in his 80s and he didn't know very much about his family. And so I thought, let me see what I can find out. Well, I got hooked. So I did find out quite a bit for him. He was happy. And it also led to a lot of good conversations with my dad. And then since then, I became more into the volunteering aspect of things. I'm a past president for the Calhoun County. And currently, I am the president of the Michigan Genealogical Council. And that's kind of a Michigan group. And our members are actually the societies rather than individuals. And I went to Western Michigan University, lived in Battle Creek about 30 years, and I just enjoy helping people with their genealogy. So hopefully tonight will be good for you.
Yeah, that's great. I got into a little bit of genealogy last summer during the quarantine when I spent some time with my mom. So my interest grew, and that's how I looked. I learned to look to society or genealogy societies for help, and that's how I found your name and got in contact with you, and you've helped me out.
Well,
So
good.
yeah. So I'm just going to do a presentation for us. So why don't we get that started, Brenda?
All right.
So Brenda's going to give us some resources and some tips to get started with family history. And while she pulls that up for us, just a quick reminder that the library downtown is open for limited hours. We're open 12 to 6 with a time limit for 1 hour per day per person. But feel free to stop in, and you can now look at books again. So that's really a good thing. So I'm going to turn this over to Brenda.
All right. Are we good to go?
Yes.
All right. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. And thank you to Melissa and Willard Library for promoting genealogy within the county. And we enjoy seeing all the different things that they are doing for the genealogists. So normally I would be doing this live, but since I'm not, I can't see your hands if you raise them. But normally I would try to get a feel for what your level of research is, and just to see if you'd been totally new to this, have never done anything with your genealogy, but you want to get started, or maybe you've been doing it for a couple of months and feel like you need a little extra more help, or you might be here just because you like genealogy, you like to support the library's programs, and you might be researching for 5 years. It doesn't matter how long you've been researching. You just have to remember we were all beginners at one time. And we have all been where the beginners are. And we have made mistakes, we have done things wrong and had to go back over them and research it. So don't feel that you're alone if you make a mistake, because everyone started out at one time that way. But hopefully this program will get you started on the right track. So, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's kind of what you have to think about genealogy research as. You are taking it one bite at a time, one step at a time, one record at a time. I'm going to be giving you lots of information tonight, and I don't want you to get overwhelmed by it. Hopefully you have the handout, and I tried to do a pretty thorough handout with all the information I'm presenting tonight. My email address is on that handout. Feel free anytime to contact me if you have questions. Or if you would like a copy of the handout with the clickable links on some of the programs that I'm going to show you in the databases, email me and ask for that, and I can send that to you as well. I'm going to talk about beginning genealogy's research process, and I'm using the 5-step process that Family Search created. And if you want more information than what I can provide tonight, you can go to the Family Search website, and this information is there with very detailed information about each step. We're going to start with step 1. Identify what you know about your family. Who are you? You want to start with yourself and work backwards. So you're going to go from yourself to your parents to your grandparents and think about what you already know. Now, maybe one of your goals in doing genealogy is you heard that you were related to someone famous, and maybe you want to connect yourself to that person. Well, you wouldn't want to start with that person and come forward, because you'll just have a tangled mess of records and stuff. So you always want to start with yourself or your mother or your father and work backwards. So the first thing you want to do is search all areas of your home. Look in attics and trunks and file cabinets and anywhere that you think maybe there would be some records that you have at home. Look for a family Bible or a baby book. I was helping my dad clean out his file cabinet before they were moving, and he handed me this pile of stuff, and he said, "Oh, just throw this away. I don't want this stuff." And I said, "Well, what is it?" He goes, "Oh, they're just my old diplomas." Well, those did not get thrown away. I did not know he had them in his file cabinets, because most of the file cabinet stuff was things that he had had from his long history of coaching. So a lot of athletic stuff and sports things. And so you want to just check everywhere you can. And then just know that family history is like putting a puzzle together. You do it one piece at a time, one record at a time, one person at a time. Ask a lot of questions. Find the oldest person in your family and ask questions. Might be a grandma, that might be an aunt or an uncle, and try to draw out of them some of the questions that you have. They may not know all of the answers, like maybe your grandma doesn't remember, where her mother was born, but start with stories then. Tell me about your mother, and you can get clues from that. Now we're in a time of COVID here, so we can't really visit a lot of these people, but you could make a phone call. If they use email, you could send an email. I once sent, because they didn't use email, to my mom's living brothers and sisters, 5 questions. That's all it was. I wanted 5 questions from them. And I sent a self-addressed stamped envelope. I got 4 of the 5 back. So you just never know. I gave you a couple of links to some papers and some forms that you can get online. And Ancestry is one, National Genealogical Society is another, Family Search. And these will help you to get organized. This one is called a family group sheet, and it has the information for one family. So it could be a father and a mother, or 2 partners, or whatever the family situation is, and their children. And you'll want to start at the top. If you know the father's full name, you can put it there. If you don't know the father's full name and you only know him as JR or something, you could write that down. Just whatever you know, write down, because those are all going to be clues for later. And then this is where you'd want to put the vital record information, the birth, the marriage, the death. Maybe you don't know when the person was married, but you know that he died or born. He died in 1990. At the age of 90, you could write in the birth about 1900. And at this point, when you're just starting your research, just put whatever clues you know, because you can go back and do further research to prove or to kind of correlate this information. Down here is where you can put information if the father had another spouse, and then his father and his mother. And you may not know all of this information, and that's fine. You'll just leave it blank or put unknown, and those will be clues for where you want to research. This is the bottom half of that record, and this is where you're going to list all the children of that couple and as much information as you know about that couple. If you know that they were married and they have a spouse's name, you can put that. And even include those young ones who may have died, because you may be able to find some information in the newspaper, depending on what the cause of death was, or on a death certificate to help you. This is a pedigree chart, and a pedigree chart shows the direct line of ancestry. So you're not going to find the brothers and the sisters or the aunts and the uncles here. You're going to start with box number 1 as yourself, or if you don't want to start with yourself and you want to start and research your mom's family or your dad's family, that would be whose name would go there. Then across the top half of this list is for the father's side of the family. And then the bottom half would be for the mother's side of the family. And just you can fill in as much information as you know. And the first time I did this, after going through and asking for questions and doing it, I had obviously myself and my parents. My parents knew who their parents were, so I had that filled out. But my dad did not know who all of his grandparents were, so I had some blanks there. And then definitely the last column for the great-grandparents, there was many empty spaces. But that gave me a goal of what I was looking for. There's a few tips that I want to share with you to make things a little bit easier now rather than have to relearn it later. And the first one has to do with dates. In genealogy, there's a standard dating form or way of doing it, and it's the day, the month, and the year. This may be foreign to some of you, but when you really get into this and start going into the European countries to do research, it will make it easier for you to know what they're talking about. Now, if you wrote this 26/1/2021, you would know that obviously the 26 is the date because we don't have 26 months. But what if it was the 3rd of January and you wrote 3-1? Would you know, okay, is that the 3rd of January or is that March 1st? So you just want to always write the way, date, month, year. Abbreviations, the main thing to know here is that you need to be consistent. So if you use ST for street, always use ST for street. Or if you use JR for junior, always use JR for junior. And then places. There's a standard way of writing places down, and it starts with the city, or if it's not a city, it might be a township, the comma county, comma state, comma country. Now you might think, oh, these are in the United States. I know these are in the United States. But if someone else was to pick up your research, like that long lost cousin in Germany, and didn't know that Michigan was in the United States, this just makes it easier. So the 2 examples I have, one's for the city of Marshall, Calhoun, Michigan, United States. Or if it's a township, Canvas Township. You want to put the township in, or somebody might be looking for the city of Canvas. And then the county, Michigan, and the United States. One thing about when you write these, especially as you get back further in time, is you want to write it for the place that it was at the time that the record was written originally. So what that means is if you found a marriage record and it is no longer there, or the county isn't there, or now it's New York instead of New Hampshire or something, you want to put what it was at the time, because when you go to look for records, that will help you. There's been lots of county boundary changes through the years. There's been state boundary changes, and you just want to know where it was at that time. Before you go any further, you want to set up an organization system. And hopefully yours won't be like the one on the left, because it can get overwhelming at first. You'll want to be recording things, and you'll have some papers that you want to do. And once you're comfortable with that, you might want to move to digital. But in the meantime, you want to figure out, how do I want to organize all this information that I'm getting? On the right, it shows binders. And you can organize binders by surnames or by locality. And that's just kind of the way that you think. There's no right or wrong way here. It would just be how comfortable you are. Or you could do a combination of things. Like here's Wilcox. Maybe you have Wilcox in Michigan and Wilcox in Indiana, and you want to separate that. And you could have that a combination of the two. Or you can use file folders. This is my method of doing it. And I did this when I started with just blank file folders. I didn't do the fancy printing or anything and labels and stuff. But then when I went and converted everything to my software, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, I did the color coding, because I've color coded the software families. And I also have a program called File Marker, where I can go in and color code actual files on my computer, and I do it that way. The important thing is to find a system that works for you in the way that you think. So for me, file folders made more sense than binders. Binders to me required a lot of space that I didn't know I would always have, so I went with the file folders. And then if you really think that you're going to stay with this and you really want to have this on your computer, there is genealogy family tree software. And I put a couple of links on your handout, and the one kind of compares a number of different software. And then just know you can get free trials at a lot of them. I know Legacy gives a free trial, Roots Magic gives a free trial, and there's other programs as well. I happen to use Roots Magic. The only reason I use Roots Magic is because when I finally decided to go to software, I asked online, what does everybody use for genealogy software? And Roots Magic was the one that came back the most people that commented had used. So I checked it out with a free trial, thought it was easy. I liked the Roots Magic website because they had videos on how to use it. And I've just been using that since. But it's up to you how you want to organize it. It's just better if you start at the beginning rather than research for 2 years and then try to figure it out. And then the last option would be an online tree. Maybe you don't want any paper in your house. You don't want it. You don't want to do a software. You don't feel comfortable having that on your computer. You can have an online tree. Ancestry.com is one. A membership at Ancestry costs money. And so if you want to attach the records there, you would have to have a membership. Family Search is free, but you just need to know that Family Search is like a one world tree, where it's one tree for everybody that uses it. Now, living people's information is protected. But in my case, all my grandparents have gone. So if I go to my grandfather's name, which is Johann Fredericks, and pull it up, I can see his family tree back a few generations, but it's not all the information I put on it. Other people are putting on it as well. You can make corrections, you can make notes. If you get someone who just insists on leaving the wrong information, it can get a little testy. I've had that happen. So what I do is I just leave a note why I feel my information is correct. Step 2, decide what you want to learn about your family, kind of the who or the what that you want to explore. And you want to take it one family at a time. And if you can do this 100% of the time, you've got it made. I can't even still today, after 10 years of research, do this. I find a new database and I think, okay, I'm going to research the Fenn family of Vermont. And there's some Fenn land records I want to look at. Well, you get going and you think, well, as long as I'm here, I might as well check the Rowley family, or I might as well check the Smith family. And so I have to kind of say to myself, focus. You need to focus on one family, one person, and then just make note of that database so you can go back and check it for other names when you're ready to do that. You want to set a goal. And if you set a goal by focusing on one task, you'll be more successful. Don't set a goal like, I want to learn all about the Smith family. That's just too broad and it would take you forever to do that. But maybe you want to find the parents' names. So you would set a goal is who are John Smith's parents. And if you know where John Smith lives, you could put that even further. Maybe you just want to find an individual's birth date or place. That would be a good starting point. Find a marriage date or place. You could put a goal as find the marriage of Daniel Fenn and Huldah Rowley, who lived in Shoreham, Vermont. Something like that. And if you know that much, maybe you don't know where they were married, you could put possibly Vermont in your goal. Finding a death date or place would be a goal. And after you have found one piece of information, you would set a new goal. And these are just some of the examples of some of the early goals that you would be setting. Or maybe you don't, maybe you know this, the marriage and the death date, but you don't know what the spouse's name was or the maiden name of the wife, and that would be another goal. Or maybe you know who the married couple is, but you want to know who the siblings are. Now, don't disregard siblings when you find them. I would record them with the information on your family group sheet, because there are times when you may not find anything about your ancestor, but you will find more about it by researching a sister. And that happened with me in the case of my great-grandfather, Johann Fredericks. I could not find his immigration record to save my life. I just couldn't. I made the bad assumption that I thought he came into the United States because he came to Michigan. And it wasn't until I found his sister's name and her husband who came in that I found out they came in through Quebec. And then I could find his immigration record because he came into Quebec as well as his mother and his other siblings. And I believe the reason for that was that it was cheaper because he went from Germany to England to Quebec and then used the waterways. He ended up settling in Manistee County. So don't forget the siblings. Step 3 is to select research to search. And this is probably the most complex part, especially when you're starting out. You may not know exactly what records you need, but as you research more, you will become comfortable with the records and you'll get to know what records give you what piece of information. You want to identify what records that will answer your question. So if your question is you need a birth date, you're going to want to look for a birth certificate or a baptismal record. You'll want to know when records were kept, which I'm going to show you how to do that easily in a little bit. Or maybe a death date. You need a death date. Then you would look for the death certificate. You could look for an obituary or a grave marker to help you with that information. I put in the handout a genealogy research checklist, and it's divided by these 4 categories. So family records are those records you're going to find at your home or grandma's home. You might find a Bible or a scrapbook. Maybe your aunt kept a diary and you would have access to that. Letters that were written. A lot of times people would keep the letters that were sent from World War II. Oral stories, school records, those types of things would be family records. Public sources are those records that are kept by the public entities, such as the vital statistics, the birth, the death, the marriages, or cemetery records. The federal census records are also a public source. Immigration records, land records, military records, and so on. And those are all listed on that source list. So it gives you an idea of what kind of records you can find. And then private sources are your genealogical societies or historical societies, archives, like the Archives of Michigan in Lansing, or libraries. Now, if you're looking at an archive, such as Archives of Michigan, they're probably not going to have your birth records unless it's for an unusual situation. But those are kept at the county level. But they might have some of the death certificates, they might have probate records, immigration records, and stuff. So you just want to kind of get to know. And then university special collections. The University of Michigan is one example that I have used. The Bentley Historical Library, I have a lot of Washtenaw County ancestry, and they had some early church records there. You also have the Western Michigan Zhang Archive, that can use for the Western Michigan. So you just kind of get to know as you're researching where some of these are. And then there's the category of miscellaneous, and that'd be something like a city directory. And a lot of those city directories are online. County histories, and maybe prison records. Maybe you have a black sheep in the family. But some of the prison records for Michigan are at the Archives of Michigan. So you've selected the records to research. Now you want to go and actually search the record or get the record. This picture is actually a place that I have personally researched at. Again, Manistee County. There's a historical museum in Manistee, and they have a card catalog that's awesome. And I have a lot of surnames from that county. So we went to my husband and I went up here and stopped at the museum, and they let us go and use the card catalogs. And what the cards are, they're like the old library system of cards. You go through and you find the surname, and then there will be a card there, and it might say engagement picture, and it would give the date of the paper. Or it might say obituary of, or sometimes they had the cemetery records. There were just a variety of things. Well, if you were given the newspaper name and date, this is where you went to find it then. I couldn't believe that they let us go back in here and use these. These papers are very brittle. And you just went through it and you looked at it, and I felt horrible. They didn't want you to use gloves, and little pieces of brittle paper were falling on the floor. And they said, don't worry about it, we'll sweep it up. Well, I did since find out, we did go back another time, and they don't let you do that anymore. They bring the this was in the basement. Now they bring the card catalogs up to you. You sit at a table and write down what you want, and then they encourage you to go to the library and look at the microfilm there. So that was one interesting search for me. But think about all the different places, and a lot of them are on that resource checklist. But think about where the record would be and determine where you need to go. So archives. And think beyond just the state archives. Like I said before, there's archives at the universities. There might be private archives, family archives, or maybe there's archives like if your father or mother or someone worked for Ford, there's a Ford archive that they have. And there's the Walter P. Reuther Library has some archival type materials. That's at Wayne State. Courthouses, you're going to find lots of information at courthouses at the county level. Email, don't forget, maybe if you're just starting out, you could send an email to your cousins, aunts, uncles, whoever you have an email address for, and tell them what you're doing. Say, I really want to get into the family history. Do you know who has pictures, certificates, obituaries that I could look at? Do we have a family Bible? And just kind of ask questions and see what kind of information you get back. Family history centers are really good resources. Unfortunately, they're not open right now because of COVID, but Battle Creek has one, and it's on Capitol, south of the Gogak Lake area. Kalamazoo has one, and Lansing has one, and you can find out where they all are from. This is a family search. This is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they have these family history centers for you to go in and research. And it's also, once they're open, a good place if you're beginning, because they will help you get started. They have databases on their computers that you can use. And if you're at a center, and I'm going to talk about family search in a little bit, but some of the family search records you cannot access from your home, but you might be able to access it on a computer at a family history center. Government offices is another place that might hold records that you're looking for. The internet. Lots of databases on the internet, and more are coming out every day. And I'm going to talk about some of my favorite internet resources. Libraries, excellent resource of genealogy material. If you're researching in the Battle Creek or Calhoun County area and you haven't been to the branch yet, when the branch opens, it's the Helen Warner branch of Willard Library. That's where the local history section is. Now you might think, oh, I don't have Calhoun County ancestry. They have more than just Calhoun County. They have Michigan resources, they have military resources, and just a lot more. And I don't have hardly any ancestry here in Calhoun County, and I have researched there many times. And you can access their library, you can access the computers there when they're open, and they have databases there as well. So don't forget your local libraries. Maybe you know the original record holder. Like my dad had his diplomas, and when he died, my mom said, well, what do you want? And I said, all I want is his military record. And so I got his military World War II records. And then when my mom passes on, she's still living, I would probably take their like marriage certificates and things like that. And then societies, again, genealogical societies, historical societies. There's fraternal organization societies. Maybe your ancestor was a member of the Masons. There's societies for different military groups. And these are the people who really know where the records are. So if you're just starting out and you need to have information about Calhoun County, you could contact the Calhoun County Genealogical Society. And we actually have a researcher who will do some research. I mean, they're not going to do all of your research, but if it's a matter of like, where would I find this? Or if it's in a newspaper, they might do a lookup for you. Or someone might come to a society and say, oh, I have ancestors in Marquette. How do I find out information? Then the societies would say, well, there's a Marquette Genealogical Society, and you really would want to check with them because they know the local records.
Hey, Brenda.
Now, yeah.
I'm just going to answer a couple questions really quick. A couple people have asked where they can find the handouts. I can send you handouts. Brenda sent them to me, so I can do that over the next couple of days. Or you can find a link on the Willard Library webpage. And if you click on programs, you'll find the program announcement box. And it has Brenda's picture and the information about the program. And there's 2 links to Brenda's handouts that are currently on the library page if you want to download them now. So you can do that. So anyway, Sorry, Brenda.
No problem. I'm glad you replied to that because I
Yeah.
don't think I knew.
Thank you.
And also, you can always email me too, and I
Yep.
will be happy to send them to you. But we like to give traffic to Willard, so try to look there first. And then step 5, which is the last in our 5-step process. And this is actually using the information that you found. So you've checked at home and you have gone and made goals, tried to search for the information, and you found the information. Now you want to use it. The first thing you want to make sure is that it's the right person. So back when I was doing research, my dad knew his grandfather's name, and it was Frank Glover. And I usually like to go to the census information for those who would be in the census from 1940 back. The 1950 census information should be coming out, I believe it's next year. But for right now, you can get the 1940 is the latest one that you can get. So I'm looking for Frank Glover in the census, and he lived his whole life in Michigan, so that made it a little bit easier. And I found 7 of them who were within a year or 2 of what his birth date was. And that's not that uncommon because in the census information, you're not really sure who's filled it out and if they really knew the exact year of birth. So I get my little 7 Frank Glovers to research, and I take one at a time. And I was easily able to rule some of them out because one of them had died at the age of 13 and another like at 16. So they hadn't had my grandfather yet. And I actually did some research over in Allegan County. I was sure that was my Frank Glover. I went to Allegan, went to cemeteries, went to the library, went to the courthouse. And I get back home and I decide, well, let me see what's on Ancestry. Well, there was another woman researching the same Frank Glover, and I thought, okay, I'll send her an email. And we chatted on email, and she goes, well, he died in Iowa. I'm like, oh, nope, not my Frank Glover. Guess which one was my Frank one? The 7th one, the last one on the list was my great-grandfather. And how I knew that I had the right person was because then when I followed that one back in the census, I saw where my grandfather and his sister were in the census with him. And then you'll want to either make copies or scan what you found, or if it's something that you have found online, you can snap a picture, a clipping of it, or you can download it if it's like from Family Search or Ancestry or some of the other sites, you can download a copy of it. And just be sure that you kind of check your download files every now and then because it can get a little unruly. So you want to make sure that you take that information and do something with it. Don't just let it all pile up in the download folder on your computer. And then you can decide if you're using forms like the family group sheet, or if you're using software, or if you have your own system or you're using like an ancestry tree or whatever, you can put that information on that form or software that you're using. I want you to keep calm and cite your sources. Citing sources is really important when you're first starting out. And I will admit, I didn't always do this, but I sure learned fast to start doing it every single time, because it only takes once for you to have to go and say, oh, where did I get that from? And not be able to find it because you didn't keep a good record trail for you to really write this down. And at this point, when you're beginning, there are some little helpful tips that you can use. And most of them are thinking along the lines of questions like who, what, where, when, how, why. So when you're citing a source, if any of you have ever had to write like a term paper or a research paper, that's what we're talking about, kind of a bibliography, but with a little bit more information. So the who, if it's a book, it would be the author. If it's a website, it would be who provided the information. If it was Ancestry, or if it was a government, like if you were on a government website, it might be Calhoun County. That would be your who. Your what would be the title. If it's a book, the title of the book. If it's a database, the title of that database. Like if it's on Michiganology, which I'll tell you more about when we get to the online sources, and it's a death certificate, you'd want to say Michigan Death Certificate. Where is the place you found it? Maybe you found it at a library, or you might have been at the archives. You want to write that down. Or if it was online, you would want to write down the URL or copy and paste the URL. You also want the when. What was the copyright date? Or the date of an email if it was an email. Or the date of the record group. Because not everything stays online all the time forever. Even Ancestry and Family Search, sometimes they're the rights that they have to use the materials only for a certain period of time. And so you will want to know that that's where you found it. And if you go back and it's not there, that's possibly what happened. And then how? How did you find it? Did you find it online? You want to write that down. Did you find it in a card catalog? You want to maybe put down the card catalog number that you had so that you can find it again. A few more tips for you. You want to keep track of all the information and where you found it. So the source material you want to know so that you can do a paper trail or an online trail back to where you got it. You want to organize as you go. This will just be so much easier if you start organizing it now. I'm going to give you a few sources that will help you. All of these are on the handout, and if they are an online source, the URL for that information is there as well. The first one is a guidebook, and it's called The Source. And I still use this. Even after 10 years of research, I still go through and look things up. And what this is it's information on kind of the basics of genealogy. It's just for the American genealogy, for the United States, but you can find out more about different record groups, different types of records like military, land, probate. There's even information on different ethnicities or nationalities in this book. I happen to own a copy only because I was going online so much and using it that I decided I wanted the hard copy here. But it is available online. It's available through the wiki at Ancestry, and there's also a link on your handout that gives you where it can be found. And then the second one is also a book, but it's also online, and it's called The Red Book. And again, it's for United States research, but it talks about every state, county, and it doesn't talk about every town, but it does give you information about some of the various town sources that you can find. And one of the things that I like about this is if I've never researched records in a state and it's the first time, I like to go in and read the information on that state. So, for example, there's Michigan, and you can learn a lot about the records in Michigan, but I had never done any research in Pennsylvania, and I'd found that some of my ancestors had lived in Pennsylvania for a while. So I read the chapter on Pennsylvania, and it will tell you when the record groups were started. So if you're looking for, say, an 1850 birth certificate in Pennsylvania, and this book tells you, well, record keeping didn't start till, I'm going to say 1890. Don't quote me on that. You'll know you won't find a birth certificate, that you'll have to look for other sources for that. Ancestry.com. Ancestry.com does cost money if you want access to their records. But if you have a library card through Willard Library, until March 31st, the library edition is available. And if you're not from Calhoun County and you don't have a library card, check your local library, because a lot of the libraries are offering this to people. This is what the Willard Library homepage looks like, or not homepage, excuse me, the local history. You'll see across the top there, there's home and then books and more. This is the local history part of it. And you'll see they have remote access with library card, on-site access only. And you'll see that's where Ancestry is, but it's only because normally in a non-COVID time period, you would have to be on site to use it. But through a special deal with Ancestry, they're allowing you to use it at home. And then look at the open access. This is for anyone. You don't have to have a library card to access these at Willard Library. They have historical images, which are awesome. I use those a lot. Genealogy and history links. The newspaper index is there. Tales of Battle Creek, which is a good book. Beyond These Gates is a book that was published about Oak Hill Cemetery here in Battle Creek. And then they have the Kellogg News for November 1951. So anyone can go in and use the open access. The next one is Cindy's List. And if Cindy's List doesn't have it, I'm not sure where you're going to find it. Now, Cindy doesn't have the actual databases, but she has category indexes of how to find it. So this is Cindy's List homepage, and there's an actual Cindy who keeps this all updated herself. And I forget how many links there are now. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands. She has a ton on here. But when you go, this is what you get at first. It shows the United States. And there's the states there and related categories. But if that's not what you're looking for, up in the top right corner there, you'll see it says search Cindy's List. And in that box, you can put what you're looking for and go to that. So I clicked on Michigan, and this is what comes up, is a category index. And then each one of these is searchable, and you can click on it and it will give you more information of where to look for Michigan counties or directories or land. And when you click on it, it will take you to actual list of what's available online for that category. And then I narrowed down to Calhoun County, and you can see what they have for Calhoun County in the category index. And it gets specific. You'll be surprised. Like maybe you have an ancestor who was in World War I and they were part of the polar bear expedition. There's actually a couple of websites that she has on here for that polar bear expedition. So it just varies. It's just amazing. You'll be surprised. Just take a look at it and see, and you'll get an idea too of what types of records are available. But like I said, there's no actual databases on Cindy's List. The next one is Family Search, and it's familysearch.org. And this is the home page after you've signed in, and they do require you to create an account, and you just have to give them an email and a name. And if you are starting genealogy, you might want to create just a genealogy email. I know I have a friend who does hers, and she puts roots at the end of it. So it might be Brenda's roots at gmail.com or something like that. I wasn't smart enough to do that, so mine all comes into my regular email, but that might be a thought, and then you could just keep everything genealogy related there. And once you've done this, this is what my homepage looks like. And you'll see in the top left corner is the drop-down menus that you can use. So the family tree that I talked a little bit more about is up there, a search, memories, indexing, that has to do with the family searching different indexing projects, and then activities. And if you click on the search, it will give you a drop-down menu. If you're looking for a specific record, you could go there. Like, you know that there are Indiana death certificates here. You could look there under records for that. Images, maybe you're trying to see if there's a specific image. Family tree, you can get there also from here. Genealogies, those typically are genealogies that have been published in books, and depending on the copyright and the agreement that Family Search has, some you may be able to read online, and others you may have to go to Salt Lake City to read about it. The Family Search catalog is where you can search. It's just like a Willard Library catalog that you want to search for a book. You can search for and see if they have the record that you're looking for. Books are also available through Family Search. Some of these, if they're out of copyright, you may be able to get online here, but some you may have to go to the library in Salt Lake City. But the one I really want to draw your attention to right now, because we're beginning genealogists, is the Research Wiki. And the Research Wiki is short for Wikipedia. It's kind of like an encyclopedia. And you can go and you can find, oops, I thought I had another screenshot. You can go and you can find information on Michigan records, and they will have the actual link to it. So say you're looking for a probate record in Michigan. If you go to the Michigan Wiki page and look for the probate section, then they will have a link that will take you directly to that record so that you can search for it. And Family Search is free, and records are coming online all the time. The next one is Find a Grave. Find a Grave was founded by a gentleman, and it's kind of a crowdsourced project where people could go in and they could put their own information on here and pictures of gravestones, or they could fulfill requests that people had. And then Ancestry.com bought it. Now it's still free. You don't have to have a membership through Ancestry, but it has changed just a little. And that's all I'm going to say about it. But this is the homepage of Find a Grave. If you know the person that you're searching for, you can just put their name in. You don't have to have the year born or the year died unless it's a very common name like John Smith. That would help to narrow it down. And then if you know the cemetery location. Now you can also search just for the cemetery. So say you know that your ancestor was buried in Kalamazoo County, but you don't know what cemetery. You could just put Kalamazoo County, Michigan in the location, and it would bring up a list of those cemeteries that are in Kalamazoo County. This is what the page looks like. This is for my great-grandfather. This is a page that I created. I took the photo of. And this is the type of information that you can find. I knew the birth after doing research. I got that information from his military pension file. Death, I have the death certificate for. I've been to the burial place. I've seen it. I have taken a picture there, so I know where it is, and the plot is number 25. Then if you look below, you can link the family members. So I know that his father was Samuel Stillman Glover, and I know his mother, but I don't know where she's buried, so I don't have it linked to that. But then siblings can be linked there, his spouse, and his children. So you can link things that way on Find a Grave. And you do have to, if you're just looking, you don't have to register, but if you want to actually put information in here, you will need to sign in. Now you can see I'm not signed in, and I was able to pull this up. The next one is Google, and Google is more than a search engine. You can use it, and by just Googling different things for your research, but you'll want to explore Google a little further. So this is the homepage for Google, and if you see the little grid there to the left of my very tiny picture, that will drop down all of the Google products. And some of the ones for genealogy that I use are maps, great maps on Google. YouTube. Maybe you don't like to read and you don't want to have to go through and read all this information about where you want to research. See if there's a YouTube video about it, or see if there's a YouTube video about where your ancestor came from. And I have found that to be helpful. And then also translation is another good one. If you have something that needs to be translated from English to another language or from another language to English, you can use that. And then on this one, Google Books. Those are books that are out of copyright. So a lot of county histories can be found here. Blogger is a blog platform, and you can find genealogy blogs on here. And there's just lots of information that you can get. Michiganology is for Michigan research. And this is what Seeking Michigan used to be. And it's still a work in progress. And with the COVID, I think it's they haven't been able to update it as much as they would like to. But the death certificates are on at Michiganology, the ones that were on Searching Michigan. So this is the home page here. You can just search in the center if you want, or if you click on the research tab, a drop-down menu will show you that this is where you can find vital records. There's a naturalization project in progress. The information will be there. Civil War, there's lots of pictures in the Civil War section. And then also, because the archives purpose is really to be the archives for the government of Michigan, there's a lot of information and records from the state government side of things. But if you click on the vital records, then you can go and put your information in for what you are looking for and pull up the death certificate. And then US GenWeb. US GenWeb is a free website, and this is the home page. You can select a state that you're looking for in the top right there by clicking down arrow, or you can just click on the state. So I clicked on Michigan, and this is what the page came up like. If you scroll down the page, you will see the Michigan county pages, and each county in the state is on here. Now, not every county in the United States might be on here, but Michigan has a pretty good representation. The information below the Michigan county pages is kind of general for all of Michigan. There's a Michigan tombstone project that sometimes I haven't been able to find it on Find a Grave, but I've found it here. There's Michigan schools, the Civil War section. If you you have a Civil War ancestor, you can look there for. So I clicked on the Calhoun County one, and this is an example of one of the records that's on the Calhoun County. Now, Haskell Home was a home in Battle Creek that was for kind of a sanitarian orphanage type of a home. And there was a cemetery there, but there's no headstones anymore. They've kind of sunk down, but there is a historical marker there. But this is the list of those people who are buried at the Haskell Home Cemetery. And it gives you the names, gives you the date of death, and then under death record, if it says yes, if you click on that, it will take you to the actual death certificate, and the same for the obit. Couple of reminders as we end up here. The internet is just the tip of the iceberg. Most of your research is still going to have to be done in libraries, archives, and courthouses. And you just want to remember that I think at one time I read that only about 10% of the databases were up, that there's just a lot more that's not up yet. So in summary, you want to follow the 5 steps by identifying what you know about your family, decide what you want to learn about your family, select records to research, obtain and search the record, and then use the information. And when you've done that and gotten to that step, then you will pick another goal to start and go through the steps. So it's just a circle. You're always going kind of in a circle to get your information. If at first you don't succeed, search again. That is why we call it research. And you can groan now if you want. But you just keep looking, because what you may not find today, you may find next week. Maybe a new database came up. I know you can do this. Yes, you can. So once again, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And if you approach your research this way, you will be successful. Are there any questions? I've got my email address there. Please feel free to email me at brae957@gmail.com. If you think of questions afterwards, or if you think I can help you. I'm president of the Michigan Genealogical Council, and so I do have access to a variety of the historical societies genealogical societies in Michigan, and I can always refer your question to one of them if needed. Okay, Melissa, do we have any questions?
I don't see any yet. Some people asked about the handout, and I referred. Tom did point out some information about the census. He said that the 1950 images will be released in April of 2022.
Okay.
And it will take a while to be indexed. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
A couple of thank yous. That was great. I really enjoyed it. It really reminded me of some information that I now need to back up and research again. So that was really good.
Yeah, it's really hard to not jump ahead and try and get everything you can. But if you do take it step by step, you will be more successful.
Yeah. And thank you for plugging Willard Library. My friend has said if you have questions, please let us know. I play with a lot of these databases all the time, so we can point you, between Brenda and I, we can probably point you in the right direction. Just a heads up, and looking forward to February, we have Matt, a reference librarian from the Library of Michigan, going to be presenting all of their resources that are available for genealogy research. So we look forward to that in February. So log on or watch our program list for February.
And I've heard Matt, and he does a nice job promoting the resources there. So hopefully they'll be getting opened soon and we can visit again.
Yeah, that's an awesome place to visit. Yeah. I have some thank yous, so thank you very much. People are commenting, and good information, well organized, good presentation.
Thank you. Yeah. And please, I am very open. I don't mind helping. So use the email address if you need to.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Brenda, for helping us. That was fun. Everyone.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for watching, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night.